Hi there, welcome to this week's market analysis. So as usual, what we're going to do is I'm going to bring you through some of the risk events that have happened last week, and moving forward in this upcoming week, what are some of the things you want to keep an eye on, and after which we're going to go on to the technical analysis portion and share with you some trade opportunities to keep an eye on for the week as well. Okay, so let's start off with looking at what has happened last week. Okay, we do have a couple of risk events that I think is worth noting. Okay, so we have the RBA cash rate statement where the Bank of Australia actually raised rates from 0.82 to 1.35. However, it's not something surprising. Okay, the market has already potentially priced in, or even I would say expected that move. So there's not much of a volatility in terms of the Aussie itself. Okay, and last Friday, we do have the Canadian labor data as well as the NFP side of things. Okay, again, it's not really market moving. The focus right now from most of the central banks is not so much about the labor market or employment change, but it's more towards global inflation. Okay, so this is something I think as a trader you also need to understand where the focus of the central banks are. And as a trader, you also want to shift your paradigm and focus towards things that the central banks are essentially looking at. Okay, now there are two events that are not in terms of risk events, but they actually are pretty significant that I think happened last week. If you're following onto the news as well, you probably see the ex-Japan Prime Minister getting shot, right? Assassinated, and he actually passed on. And the other one was Boris Johnson actually resigned from Prime Minister, right? So these are two events I think might have an impact in the financial market, but how big that impact really is going to be, we need to keep tab onto that as well. Okay, but just have that in mind. These are the two things that also happened that's not really in terms of in the calendar. Okay, and if we go on to this week, you can see straight up on Monday, we have BOJ Governor Kuroda speaking. Tentatively, right now it's on Monday, and of course, we have the Bank of England Governor Bailey speaking as well, right? So I think, right, there's a very high possibility they are addressing the issue that happened as I mentioned. Okay, so there might be some volatility in terms of the yen as well as the pound. Do take note of that, and if you're trading those two currencies, have in mind, okay, what are some things that has happened recently too. Okay, so we do have a couple of Bank of England speeches for the week, not surprising. Okay, and in terms of some of the, I would say, more official scheduled events, we have the RBNZ rate statement. Okay, so you can see over here, general consensus, we are expecting it to hike by 0.5, nothing surprising. Then following on Wednesday, we do have the US CPI and core CPI as well. This data is going to be important because it's actually tracking inflation. And same thing over here, if let's say the CPI and core CPI starts to fall, it might ease some pressure from the Fed, and they need not hike rate too aggressively, and that would then have also an impact in the dollar and the global market. Okay, on Wednesday night, we have the Bank of Canada coming in with their rate statement as well. Again, we are expecting it to hike by 0.5, nothing surprising. And on Thursday, we have the Aussie employment change and unemployment rate. Again, I don't think this is a very significant data at this point in time. And on Friday, we have some of the US core retail sales and retail sales data coming in. This will be important as well because it tracks, again, inflationary data. Okay. So as of now, I think the main concern, as we've covered, globally is really about inflation. So any related data that tells us about inflationary data, it's going to be important, and it's going to have a little bit more impact in the currency prices themselves. Okay, so that's the risk event that you want to keep an eye on for next week. With that, let's take a look at the chart. Okay, so let's start off with the dollar index over here. Okay, so last week we had the dollar continue to hit a little bit higher, but from a price action perspective, this is moving a little bit of a crawl formation. there is the divergence that is building up over here as well in terms of RSI. So that suggests that there's a lack of momentum to the upside, and a good possibility, as we are seeing right now, as of last Friday, we're gonna probably see the dollar hit a little bit lower. Okay, so I'm expecting this week moving forward a little bit of a weakness from the dollar side of things. Of course, things can change fairly quickly depending on the data coming in as well from an inflation perspective. Okay, so do look out for, in terms of dollar index, around 105.60. There's a good possibility we're gonna see that come down, retest that 105.60. So if you're looking at a dollar opportunity this week, you can do look out for short-term sell opportunity on it. Okay, vice versa, if you flip it to the euro, okay, euro has been falling quite significantly for the past couple of weeks. We broke through a very important level over here around 1.0360, and we saw it break through very impulsively, but again, last week here we do see a little bit of a divergence. Okay, again, the market is never going to move in one direction all the time, right? So when we have a very significant sell-off, there's bound to be a slight retracement along the way. And looking at the chart right now, I'm not going to be surprised if, let's say, we see the euro dollar bounce a little bit, perhaps coming back to around 1.0360 to retest the previous support, and now of course it can turn into a potential resistance zone. So do look out for it. I mean, if you're looking at short-term opportunities, we can look for buy towards a target of 1.0360, and when the price reaches around there, we might want to consider looking for a longer-term sell on the euro dollar from there. Okay, so this week, if you're focusing on euro dollar, you can potentially look for a short-term buy opportunity on it. Now, in terms of the pound dollar, again, as I mentioned, because of Boris Johnson resign as the Prime Minister, there might be some volatility and uncertainty in terms of the pound. However, from a technical point of view, it's rather clear in the direction I would want to focus for the week. As long as the market is able to maintain around 1.1945 and above, okay, we are seeing that the move down here might have stalled right from the previous support level, and there is a short-term opportunity where we can look for a bounce, right? And if you couple this with the potential weakness coming in from the dollar side of things, then we might have a good opportunity to buy into the pound dollar over here. Okay, so do look out for potential target around 1.24. Okay, and of course there are some minor resistance along the way, and of course you need to have a proper strategy to time your entry and exit along the way and manage the trade. Okay, but for me, as long as the market is able to maintain above 1.1945, I'm looking for buy opportunity on the pound dollar towards 1.24 for the week. Now back to Aussie and Kiwi, we are seeing a very nice corrective pattern as of now. If you're familiar with technical patterns, this is one pattern that we call a diagonal or a wedge. Okay, the thing right now is there are two main possibility of how the Aussie can develop. Of course, we have the AUDNZD coming in terms of the rate statement next week, so that might give some volatility and movement in the Aussie as well, right? We are kind of like brothers and sisters. So Aussie dollar over here, one possibility we can see is the market come back down, break through that 6760, retest the bottom of this trend line before that bigger move to the upside, or alternatively we can see this as a potential double bottom and the market breaks above starting next week. Right, so in either case here, my primary focus is going to be buy opportunity. Whether I'm going to look for buy, if the market hit lower towards the bottom of the trend line, or if the market is able to break above that trend line, maybe do a little bit of a retest, that will be also a buy opportunity for me. The final target over here I'm looking out for is around 0.7070. Okay, so if you're looking at Aussie dollar next week, do look out for buy setup as well. Okay, very similar of course is the Kiwi. You can see the pattern here looks rather similar in nature. So same thing over here, we're looking for buy opportunity. And in terms of the final target for the Kiwi dollar, it will be around at 6,390. That will be the zone to look for your target. Okay. Now, last one, in terms of the commodity currencies, and then we'll move on to the franc and the yen. Okay, dollar CAD over here for me, based on what has happened last week, price action, I would personally suggest that it's not the best pair to be focusing on at the moment. It's not giving a very clear pattern as to where the market is likely going to hit next. We are seeing that right now it seems to be trapped within this range, right? We have the top, double top, and a nice reaction as the market is heading lower back to retest perhaps the previous bottom at 1.2820. So as of now, the market is in the middle of the range. It's not the best level and best time to be looking for potential trade at this moment. So my personal suggestion over here is to perhaps not channel too much energy onto dollar CAD. Just leave it aside for the week, and we'll perhaps come back in the future, see how the market has developed. Now, dollar franc has been a pretty nice trade for me so far, and the market is still moving a little bit higher, right? So the last session we talked about was more towards this pattern here where the market came down very slow, and we're looking for potential to the upside with a target at 9,730. Okay, so right now the market has actually break through that. I do expect a little bit of a retracement from here, because again, the market is never going to move, in one direction all the time. There's a good possibility this will probably come back and retrace a bit. If that happens, I think it's still a very decent opportunity to look for upside, with our second target around 1.0050, which is the previous top there. Okay, so dollar franc, if you're looking at it, or if you're already in the trade, following your strategy, you will manage to get involved in the buy. Do manage that trade. I think coming into this week, there might be a good possibility this will probably do a bigger retracement. So be a little bit patient. You might want to get out or take partial profits of your previous trade as well. Look for next opportunity. If it's valid, you can add on or even scale in onto the idea here on dollar franc. Right, so overall dollar franc, we'll be looking for buy setup. Now next up is on the dollar yen. Dollar yen right now is continuing its consolidation. So overall, again, these are the situation and environment where I'm probably not going to be focusing too much onto that. So I'll just leave it aside until it breaks out of this consolidation for more confirmation. Okay, so just gonna leave the dollar yen out of it. In terms of commodities, we have the gold chart. Gold over here is rather similar to the euro, so you can see that it actually broke through that very significant support around 1786. As of now, price action is suggesting more downside, but the confirmation that I'm looking out for is if this is going to develop into a correction, right, into a flat pattern. So give it perhaps 2 to 3 days into the week. If you see this really developing and forming into a flat and correction pattern, the possibility for more downside is very high. Okay, so for gold over here, if I were to zoom out all the way to the daily, the next support level would fall somewhere around 1688. That can be your primary target for a potential sell trade on gold going into this week here as well. Okay. Lastly over here, let's mention a little bit in terms of the Bitcoin cryptocurrencies. Okay, so I shared last couple of weeks we might get a short-term bounce. We are seeing that at this moment, and the market price is already reaching very close to 22900. My suggestion over here is if you're in the buy, manage that, because when the market reaches around 22900, there's a good possibility we're going to see a reaction. Of course, we won't know what's the reaction as of now, but do consider taking partial profits if you're already in. If you're not in a trade or in any trade in terms of Bitcoin, do be patient and see how the market reacts around that 22900 level. Okay, if it's gonna go up in a very corrective manner, okay, do consider look for a potential sell. However, if it's able to break through that zone impulsively, okay, then wait for a correction, pull back, and I think with that, it kind of tells us that there's a very high possibility there's more upside onto that. Okay, but we need to be patient on this setup. Okay, so that's my view on BTC. Hopefully it helps. And overall this week, I think there are a couple of opportunities, especially on the major pairs here, that is presenting rather neat. So if you're actively trading, okay, do manage your risk accordingly, and all the best to your trading for the week, and I'll see you guys very soon again.